Double on Monday night. It did take me till Monday night at midnight to be watching Oriole baseball. The Orioles and the Yankees. The Angelos Gods of Masson actually gave me a spring training game to watch that I watched in delay. But it is baseball season. It's Oriole season. This guy's loved the Orioles for many, many years. He is the former MLB editor for Sporting News. He now hosts a baseball book pod, and you can follow that. It's a podcast on books. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And he's one of our defending champions, and we like him a lot because his Twitter has 2 beers, a ball, and a glove. He is Justin McGuire. You can follow him at JMcGuireMLB. It is Orioles season. We've waited a couple of months here. Feels like a long, long time ago that Ubaldo Jimenez wrecked our season, right, Justin?
Yeah, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter, as Beatles said, and I think everybody's ready for this. Everybody's ready for baseball, and I know I am. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, meanwhile, the bad news comes out of Sarasota right away. I was over in Australia and New Zealand, and every time I would look on our own website, Luke Jones would have some news about Tillman or about Bourne or about Britton or about Hardy. It's been a tumultuous couple of weeks, and we're barely to March, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's part of it with the Orioles right now is they're not really a young team. Even someone like Tillman, he's a veteran at this point. Hardy's certainly been around a while, and these kind of things happen. As the Yankees have found out in recent years, and other teams have found out when you have a team that's a little bit on the older side, you deal with a lot of injuries. And I guess the good news is they're dealing with them now. So hopefully they can kind of get them out of the way in the spring and the early part of the season, and not have to deal with them as much as things go on.
Well, the Tillman thing's disconcerting right now, and you talk about this team making the playoffs a couple of times, and, a guy that's played a role in a lot of their success here, and, obviously we go back to the Adam Jones trade and all that stuff, but in the case of Tillman, I don't think they can win without him being at least pretty good or representative, or at least going out there and taking the ball 25 or 28 times this year.
You wouldn't think so. I mean, because as always, I mean, this is, we joke about this, but every time I'm on the phone with you, we talk about the Orioles pitching staff needs help, and as always it does. They have.
Well, that's been the case since like '83, right? Literally.
Yeah, it's been the case for an awful long time. That's for sure. And yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, Tillman, you certainly, he's one of the 3 key guys, I think, along with Gossman and Bundy, that you're gonna need to get something decent out of those guys, probably for them to be a contender. You're gonna need all 3 of those guys to be, like I said, at least good major league pitchers. You don't necessarily need them to be superstars, but if Tillman's gone for any length of time, I don't know. They can get by with a 4-man rotation for probably the first month or so because they have so many off days in April. But if he goes much beyond that, I don't even know who you slot into that 4th spot. I guess Wilson and Wright are still available, but it's not an option you want to have to deal with for too long. That's for sure.
Did Bundy do enough to win you over for real that you really believe he's going to win 15 games this year and be that sort of guy for them?
I certainly think he has the ability. With him, I'm always worried about the health, just because of his history with injuries and the fact that, he really hasn't pitched. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at what's the most he's ever pitched in a season. Probably last year, right? I mean, including all his minor league years. So he's never really had a full season as a starter at a major league level. So certainly concerned about that. And, he showed flashes. There were times when he looked really, really good, and there were other times when he looked, very ordinary. But he showed me enough to think that, I'm more excited about him now than I was a year ago. I'll put you that way.
Well, he only had 2/3 of an inning in the big leagues, and we've been talking about the kid, it seems like, for a decade. I mean, literally. I mean, his first pitch was in 2012. We're now up to 17. And to your point, on an innings basis, he threw 103 innings in 2012, and from that point forward, I don't think he threw 150 total innings through minor leagues. 57 in Delmarva, 30 in Delmarva, 26 in Frederick, 15 in Aberdeen. Threw 110 innings in the big leagues last year.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's they're going to have to be careful with them. I would say, not try not to overdo it, because there will be motivation to overdo it, especially if Tillman's hurt. I mean, they're certainly going to be, if he's pitching well, they're going to want to use him a lot, and I think they need to just be careful and kind of ease him in as much as they possibly can. But it's going to be tough. Like I said, that starting pitching is so thin. Again, if he's pitching well, it's hard to see them not using him when they have to.
It's almost like talking about this presidency to talk about the Orioles over 25 years for the surreal nature of what is an alternative fact and what's real and, how hard they're trying and where their ethics and their integrity are. This is one of those off seasons with the Orioles where, I look at what the Red Sox have done. I look at the amount of money the old man's made off of this team, and I look at the money that they spent on Chris Davis, but they held off on Trumbo. Wieters in the end winds up getting far less money than he thought he was going to get, or Boras thought he was going to get down in Washington. And then there's the whole Manny Machado thing, and it's such a strange organization. And I know Buck has adjusted to this, and Duquette's just happy to have a seat at the table at this point. And you tried to get that seat in the Toronto table a couple years ago, but this is the time of the year where you still come back and you say, this isn't a very serious organization about winning, really, and about spending money, really, because here we are with the Red Sox and the Yankees, and this is the first time I feel that pendulum swing a little bit, Justin, where I feel like the Red Sox and the Yankees have sort of lost their way for a period of time that sort of opened the door for Toronto and the Orioles to be more competitive. I think Tampa kicked their own door in a decade ago with good drafts and a manager and a bunch of young good players that they could not afford to keep in a market where they probably shouldn't be playing baseball. But that's another story altogether. But for the Orioles, they've competed by sort of by hook or by crook on a wing and a prayer and dumpster diving in the end and, sort of wildly overspending on Chris Davis for me. And now they're going to look at this Machado thing, who is, not the fool's gold, sort of the real gold, and he's going to wind up running off and playing for the Red Sox or the Yankees or the Phillies before it's all over with.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly it certainly seems likely that he's gonna become a free agent, and I mean, it doesn't appear as though they've really made any kind of serious effort to talk to him about a long-term deal. I would love it if they would, and I think that it would be the smart thing to do. But
it's almost like being a Tampa fan, Justin, where like every time I'm on the phone with a guy in Tampa, they're like, well, he'll be here until he's gone, and if he's really any good, he'll be gone even sooner, and we'll deal him off for our next version of Mancata or whatever it would be. But they're like a deer in the headlights on this Machado thing, and I guess that really speaks to the owner and the general incompetence of the owner, which has been at the heart of why this team hasn't been more competitive over 25 years.
Yeah, and I think you also have to just understand that Machado, it seems to me anyway, and I don't know, but it seems to me that he wants to be a free agent, and come hook or crook, he's going to be a free agent, and he's going to see what he's worth. I don't think he's in a position right now where he wants to limit his market, so to speak. You know what I mean? By agreeing to a deal now, not knowing what he could possibly get. So I'm not sure there's anything they can do. I think Bryce Harper's the same way. I don't think Bryce Harper intends to sign a long-term deal with the Nats. I think he wants to go on the market and see what he can get. And and ultimately, I'm not sure what they can do about that when you're Baltimore, and not the Red Sox, you're not the Yankees. I don't know how much luck you're going to have trying to get someone like him, to agree to that long-term deal if he doesn't want to do it.
Well, and I think the bidding started 2 years ago at $300 million. Now it's at $400 million, and that's certainly not a stratosphere that the Orioles want to play in, and maybe nor should they play in, right? But if that's the case, and if things don't go the right way this year, would they stomach? And they've never been this creative, quite frankly. Maybe for a couple of minutes during the McPhail era, they found some creativity that, quite frankly, they're still eating off of at this point. But would they deal Machado on July 29th for, 3 versions of Mancata? I mean, look at what the White Sox got for Chris Sale. Look at what the Yankees did last year at the trading deadline to get themselves younger. And look at what the Orioles did to put themselves in a position to have Adam Jones and Chris Tillman and Chris Davis by making deals that are on the very face of them risky. To be a risk taker is to make these deals. The Orioles have never done that sort of thing.
No, they certainly haven't. Certainly not in recent years. Anyway, I'm trying to think of the last time they did anything like that, and I can't really think of anything.
They sold off Will Clark, as I remember it. Yes,
right. I mean, you go back long enough. They traded Don Baylor when he was coming out of free agency, but to get Reggie Jackson.
They also got Earl the Big Cat Williams as their big off season as well. I remember that one too.
Yeah, so we're going back 40 years. So, it's certainly not. It's not been their MO. I actually said before last season I thought they should have given serious thought to putting him on the trade market last offseason when they were coming off the 81 and 81 season and didn't look like they were going much of anywhere. But then they signed Davis and they sort of go all in, not all in, but they go somewhat in 2017. So it's hard to say. I mean, the problem that they've had the last few years, and it's not really a problem, but the thing is because they've played just well enough to be, to sort of be a contender most years, or kind of be a contender, or actually be a contender. And so, they get to July and they're not quite bad enough that it makes sense to do a sell-off, and that's the thing. I guess if they're really truly out of it in July, I think they should give serious thought to it, but I don't think they will. I'll put it that way.
Well, and then it's where they're going to be in July, and a lot of that for me is going to be about not only how they play, but how the Yankees and the Red Sox play as well. The feeling is this is one of those years where the Red Sox could start the season playing 680 ball and be sort of relentless in the way that the Cubs were last year. Certainly the guys they're sending to the hill every day. And Boston's always a box of chocolates. I mean, hey, even the Panda lost a little weight here, I see, for spring training. We're not seeing those fat guy pictures of him right now. But the Red Sox feel very, very motivated right now.
Right, and they're they look to be really good for sure. And you said Price rebounds and pitches like Price is capable of, and Sale, and we know Mookie Betts is one of the best players in baseball at this point, and Bogarts is good. And they got there's just a lot of talent on that team, and I think there's a lot more talent on that team than anywhere else in the division. I'll put you that way. So I personally would expect them to run away with the division, but I've expected that before and it hasn't happened. There was Bobby Valentine. Everybody expected them to be really good, and that didn't happen. The last year was Rincon and that kind of thing. So you never know, but certainly on paper, they look to be more solid than anybody else in the division.
We are on the line with Justin McGuire, longtime editor of MLB for All Things Sporting News, now doing the baseball book podcast. Tell everybody what you're doing with these baseball books, because, I talk to authors for a living around here, too. I love smart people, Justin. That's why I put you on.
Yeah, well, it's been a lot of fun. Basically, once, when I got into a position where I wasn't working full-time, I wanted to kind of keep myself in baseball a bit. So I started this podcast, and the idea was each episode I would focus on a different book. So I went around and I just contacted some authors, and they agreed to do it. So I got a few under my belt, and then I started getting more and more authors, and then people coming to me. And so at this point, I've done like 22 of them.
Wow!
I do it twice a week, and it's some of them are current books, some of them are older books, and I've talked to guys like Brian Kenny and Rob Nyer and Ben Lindbergh, and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, so basically it's called Baseball by the Book. You can find it on iTunes. And it's been a lot of fun.
Well, that's what I do around here is talk about sports, talk about baseball. I mean, I remember how excited I was to get Peter Golenbach on the program at one point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and some of my favorite books have been baseball books. Like, I love Seasons in Hell by Mike Shropshire. That's probably my favorite baseball book, and maybe it's just because of the era, because of how many stars were a part of that. But, are we still seeing great baseball books being written in the era of the internet?
Yeah, I think there are some. I interviewed a guy named Charles Learson. He wrote a book on Ty Cobb a few years ago that it won the Casey Award for Best Baseball Book of the Year, and it has a huge impact on our historical understanding of Ty Cobb. And I really recommend it to anybody.
You know what? By the way, Luke Jones is reading that book, my partner in crime here in Baltimore. He was telling me about it at the Super Bowl in Houston. So Luke loves baseball books, so he's right up your alley on that.
Yeah, well, tell them to check it out. It's been a lot of fun. But, yeah, that's one that in recent years, there was the one that Ben Lindbergh and Sam Miller did last year called The Only Rule That Has to Work, where the two of them went out and became the executives of the Sonoma Stompers independent league team for a year and tried to apply sabermetric principles to the team for a year and wrote about it. That was a really interesting book. I interviewed Ben Lindbergh for that. So, yeah, there's definitely some interesting books coming out. But I'm also going back for some older ones and that sort of thing as well.
I thought the Jeff Passan book on pitching was excellent too. I fingered through that pretty good.
Yeah, that's a really good book. I have not talked to him yet, but he's on my list of people I'd like to get.
Well, it's good to be on the list. And for I guess anyone following baseball here going into this year, if you're an Orioles fan, you're on it, you're watching, you're monitoring the Red Sox and the Yankees. But it does feel like the Cubs are the 10,000-pound gorilla right now, right?
Well, yeah, you would certainly think so. I mean, they were so good last year, and there's not really any reason to think they're not going to be as good. I mean, they're still a fairly young team, and some of the guys, Lester, and is not a spring chicken, but Bryant and Schwarber and all these guys, Rizzo's still in his prime. So there's no reason to think they're not going to be another 95 to 100 win type team again, and then have a really good chance of repeating as World Series champions. So yeah, I would be surprised if they don't win that number of games.
It is fleeting, though. Ask the Kansas City Royals, right? I mean, that thing's fallen apart very, very quickly, and obviously, incredible offseason with the death of Yordano Ventura. I don't know how they're going to pick the pieces up from that. Same thing with the Miami Marlins, and trying to pick up the pieces of not having your best pitcher at a time when you're sort of around that middling mark, and you're trying to get a little bit of extra mojo. It's been a rough year around baseball. Certainly, those circles.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Royals, as face a bunch of their core players are facing free agency soon. Hosmer and Kane and a lot of those guys. So, yeah, their window may already be closed, honestly, and if not, it's certainly closing rapidly. And it's true. I think if you are a team in a place like Kansas City or Baltimore, you may have a window that's only a year or two. So you got to really jump on it when you can. And the Royals did. They got their World Series ring out of it, and so I think for them, it's worth it, even if this window closes pretty soon. The Orioles haven't gotten that out of it. Maybe their window's closing too. I don't know.
Well, last year I played a little game in spring training, and I think I played it with you and said, give me $1 on a team that's going to make the playoffs. It's just any team and the Houston Astros were my pick last year, and obviously that little train didn't get there. I spent 10 days down there during the Super Bowl and was shocked at how the Astros brand has grown a little bit here over the period of time, but there's also belief there, I think, that they're doing something there, that they're going to be a playoff team. How do you feel about the Astros going into the season?
Well, yeah, I think Astros, they certainly, we know they made the playoffs 2 years ago. They came fairly close last year. I think they only ended up being a couple games out of that second wild card spot at the end of the day. And, Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, Springer, they've got a lot of talent there. And I think they'll certainly be in the mix. I mean, the Rangers should be good again, too. But, I would expect the Astros to be in the mix for the division title and for a wild card if they don't get that. So, yeah, I think they're probably have a good shot at making it. And they're a team, again, that the talent is pretty young. So you think that they're all hitting their primes about now. It should be a good team for a while.
He is Justin McGuire. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at JMcGuire. That's McGuire, MLB, as well as his Baseball Book Podcast. The Twitter for that is at Baseball Book Pod. And you can follow him out there out of the fighting city of Charlotte, North Carolina, and longtime Oriole fan. Always great to catch up with you. We'll see you further on up down the road here as we get up on opening day. We'll talk some more Oriole baseball with you, Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
You got it. The man has 2 beers, a ball, and a glove on the front of his Twitter, as well as a mock-up of, I think that's Pie Trainer, but it might be Ty Cobb. I know it's some sort of T206 Gaudy old baseball card thing. He is Jay McGuire, MLB, out on Twitter. You can find me out in the WNST Buy a Toyota audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. You can listen to any of our work. You can listen live by downloading that TuneIn Radio app, and you can also get our morning newspaper delivered to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. That's headlines, standings, box scores, all of our audio content. Not to mention our text service, which is our breaking news service. That happens whenever there's breaking news. You get it first on the phone. There's no spam. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5, getting you ready for the SSV on WNST. It's good to be back from down under here. We're going to have Barry Trotz up here in Baltimore on March 20th on a Monday night doing a little Rock the Red, so make sure you hold that date. We're putting that calendar to get together for you later on in the week. We'll have some more news on that, as well as our London trip on sale. You can email me, nasty at WNST.net. I'll get you some more information on that. It's also under the Road Trips tab at WNST.net. We're waiting on Green Bay and Nashville and Oakland, waiting on the NFL schedule. My God, we got Combine, we got the Caps, the Wizards, the Terps. Watching the Orioles play some spring training. We're trying to figure out what the Ravens are going to do out at the Combine and at the draft. Plenty of things on our mind around here. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.